So one day I woke up for school, like I usually do. But this time I woke up without my alarm, which was shocking, but I just went about my morning as usual. I got up, hit my face with water, and then I headed downstairs. But on my way downstairs, I noticed it was super quiet, and nobody was there, which is weird because everybody should be getting ready. So then I decided to go to the kitchen and look at the clock on the microwave. And then I said,
"Holy crap, it's 9:30.
Like for part 2.
So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and it now weighs 11.9 pounds and is the size of a basketball. And I was going to stop, but everyone wanted me to keep going, so I went to Walmart, got some more bands, then went home, dumped them out, put some gloves on, and got back at it. I started by placing the pile of colored rubber bands because it's easier to place, and once I was done with that, I weighed it, and it was 12.9 pounds, and still bounced pretty high, and made a good basketball. Then I went to Walmart to get more colored rubber bands, but they were out, so I just got the normal ones and went home, dumped that out, and placed that entire pile. I finished it off, and it was now 13.4 pounds, and still the size of a basketball, and still bounced pretty high. Like if you want me to keep going and just see how big I can make it. So I'm now to part 22 of this, and everyone just wants more, and more. So I went to Walmart and bought more. I bought all the packs of colored rubber bands I could carry, and then I went home and dumped them all out into a pile, which was a lot. And then I got busy placing all the bands, which took so long I almost quit. But I didn't, and it's done, and now weighs 48 pounds. And it's like 3 times the size of my head and can even crush a can of Flex Seal. Wow. And I'm also able to fully balance on it now, like if I should keep on going. So it's now part 23, and I'm really starting to think it's never going to end. But that's okay. I went to Walmart and, bought a bunch of colored rubber bands, then went home, dumped them all out into a nice pile, and then I started placing them. And it's to the point now where the bands sometimes break, and it hurts. I took a break, as usual, and came back to place this bag I ordered on Amazon. And I placed it, and the ball now weighs over 51 pounds. Could probably kill a bear, and is no longer a good basketball. More like a chair. Here's it next to a basketball. And here's my trick chat. Ooh. Like if I should keep on going. So I've been making this rubber band ball for way longer than I thought I'd be, and I'm just going to keep going. So I went to Walmart, and they were out of rubber bands, so I left and came back a few days later, and they had some. I went home, dumped them all out into a pile, and started placing them. And it's honestly just so satisfying to watch the pile go down. And when I was done, I left and came back later with a new bag that I ordered on Amazon. And the band seemed good, so I placed the entire pile until I was done. And it now weighs 23.6 pounds, is way bigger than my head, and it's really hard to throw, and even harder to make a basket with. But I made one. Like if I should keep going. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and I'm just going to keep adding rubber bands every time Walmart restocks. So I went there, got a few more bags of colored rubber bands, then went home and started with the 2 bags I ordered on Amazon. I placed the entire pile until you couldn't see a colored rubber band in sight. And then I left and came back later to place the colored rubber bands I got at Walmart. And I placed it until I was done. It's huge and now weighs almost 26 pounds, is super hard to throw and really hard to catch, but I can still make a basket with it and even stand on it now. Well, kinda. Like if you think I should keep going. So it's now to part 28 of making this giant rubber band ball, and I ordered more rubber bands. I dumped them out and placed them. And when I was finished with that, I got out these garbage bag rubber bands that I ordered that are also pretty colorful. And then I placed another pile of those ones. And it now weighs 68 pounds. I took it downstairs, out to the yard, into the cul-de-sac, and look at it next to a basketball. Ordinary basketball and hoop. Rubber band ball and hoop. Tossing basketball, tossing band ball. But I can stand on this one, like if you want me to keep on going. So it's now to part 24 of making this rubber band ball, and I went to Walmart and got more colored rubber bands. I got a bunch and then went home and started out with this new pack I ordered on Amazon. They were pretty cool and more stretchy than the normal colored rubber bands. I placed that entire pile and then took a break and came back to place all these other colored rubber bands. I dumped them out into a pile and then placed the entire thing until I was done. And I also ordered this little rubber band ball just for fun to look at and stuff. The big one now weighs 55 pounds and is pretty hard to get down the stairs. And compared to the little one, they bounce similar, but I can stand on this one and not on this one. And I can toss this one, but not this one. Like if you want me to keep on going. So I'm now to part 25 of this giant rubber band ball, and everyone just wants more and more. So I ordered these new rubber bands on Amazon, and they were way too small. So I got sad, and then I went to Walmart and bought a bunch of colored rubber bands and then went home. Then I, dumped them out into a pile and started placing them, which took longer than usual for some reason. But I finished, then took a break and came back later to place these other colored rubber bands I ordered. I placed that entire pile, and the ball kind of looks like Spider-Man now, and weighs 57 pounds. I took it downstairs and outside, then threw it, and sat on it, and it's also way bigger than my head, and I can stand on it. So, like, if you want me to keep going. Part 3 of making a rubber band ball. So this watermelon exploded and left us with this wad of rubber bands. So I turned it into this actual rubber band ball, and now we're here and I'm out of rubber bands, so I went to Walmart. I got some rubber bands and then went home and emptied them out and opened up a bag and got busy. But after a little bit, I left and then came back the next day and finished off the pile. And then I dumped out 2 more bags and started placing them. But I got bored and ended up leaving and coming back again the next day to finish it all off. I placed rubber bands forever, and then I went outside to test it out on my broken hoop. Yeah, it was hard to play with, but it bounced really high. Here's it next to a basketball. Yeah. After that, I went back inside to finish off the pile, and then I dumped out another 2 bags and started placing rubber bands for what felt like an eternity. And I was finally down to the last bag. I put them all on, and I was done. And it's pretty big, but it's going to take like 1 million likes for me to keep going. So I'm now on part 21 of this rubber band ball, and no one ever seems to want me to stop, so I went to Walmart and bought all the colored rubber bands they had. Then I went home and started out with the bag I ordered on Amazon, and I placed that entire pile. And then I took a break, as usual, and came back to place all the colored rubber bands. And I dumped them all out into a pile, and then placed it all, which took quite a while, but I finished, and it now weighs 45 pounds. Could probably take me out, and I broke my already broken basketball goal with it. But hey, I can stand on it. And like if you want me to keep going. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball for quite a while now, and I'm out of rubber bands, so I went to Walmart, and they had so many colored rubber bands. I got them and then went back to carry even more and then left. I went home and started with this pack I ordered, and I placed the entire pile. And done. And then I took a break and came back later with all the colored rubber bands. I dumped them all out into a pile, which was a lot, and got busy placing them for what felt like an eternity, because this is probably the biggest pile I've ever placed. And it's huge. It now weighs 30 pounds, is way bigger than my head, is pretty hard to throw, and almost impossible to make a basket with, and I can even stand on it. Like if you think I should keep going. So I've been making this rubber band ball for a long time, and it's now part 30. And I ordered another pack of these big rubber bands and placed the entire pile. And after I was done with that, I got the pile of even more of these big colored rubber bands than I did last time. And when I was done with that, the ball was looking pretty good at 76 pounds. I took it out to the street, picked it up, and threw it the best I could, and then tried again. And I ended up just laying on it and then standing on it. So like if you want me to keep on going. Part 7 of making a rubber band ball. So I've been making this ball, and it's pretty giant now and weighs 10 pounds. But I wanted it bigger, so I went to Walmart, got a bunch of colored rubber bands, then went home, dumped them out, put my gloves on, and first finished off the pile of normal rubber bands that was already on the table. And once I was done with that, I dumped out all the bags of colored rubber bands and began placing them. I did this for quite a while, and the ball was finished, and it was huge. And it now weighs 11.9 pounds and is almost the size of a basketball. And it also bounces pretty high. And I also shot it in the hoop. And now I'm officially finished with it. It looks pretty cool. So as you probably know, I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and I needed more rubber bands, so I went to Walmart. But they were out of the ones I needed, so I went to a different Walmart, and they had some. Then I went home, dumped them all out, and got busy. And sped up, this all just looks really cool. Anyway, I finished that pile and took a break and came back later to finish this bag I ordered. And sadly, it's a lot less colorful now. But I'm done, and it now weighs 28.3 pounds and bounces decently. And I also made a basket. Like if I should keep going. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and it's getting pretty huge, and I'm probably not stopping. So I went to Walmart, got all the colored rubber bands they had, then went home, dumped out the bag of normal rubber bands, and placed that entire pile, which was kind of hard because of how big the rubber band ball is now. Then I took a couple days off and came back to place all 8 bags of colored rubber bands, which took a while, a long while, but eventually I finished, and it's huge now. It weighs 21.6 pounds and is a lot harder to throw and catch than it used to be, and almost impossible to make a basket with, like if you want me to keep going. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and to be honest, at this point I'll probably never stop. So I went to Walmart, got a bunch more rubber bands, then left, went home, dumped out all the colored rubber bands, and began placing them, until I was done with the entire pile, which took a while. But I did it, then took a break and came back later to start on the pile of normal rubber bands. And I placed that entire pile, covering all the colored rubber bands. So sad. Then took another break, came back and dumped out all the thicker rubber bands and began placing them, until I was out. And the ball now weighs 19.2 pounds and is a lot harder to throw and way harder to make a basket with. Yeah, it's pretty big, so like if you want me to keep going. So I'm now all the way to part 27 of my rubber band ball, and I need more bands, so I ordered these big rubber bands and started placing them. And these bands are really hard to place, so this was really exhausting. So I took a break and then came back later to place these colored rubber bands and make it look good. I placed the entire pile and it now weighs 65 pounds. I let it roll out to the cul-de-sac, picked it up, threw it down, then tried to stand on it, then threw it again, and then my brother tried to stand on it. And like, if you want me to keep on going. So it's now part 29 of this rubber band ball, and I guess I'm just going to keep going. I ordered another box of these thick rubber bands and put the whole pile on my ball. I then took a break and came back later to place all these colored rubber bands that are also supposed to be garbage bag rubber bands. I placed the entire pile and it was done. And it's now 72 pounds. I rolled it downstairs, outside, and into the cul-de-sac. Here it is in comparison to my head, and here's me trying to throw it. And look, the basketball hoop fell over. But I can stand on it. And like if you want me to keep on going.
So one day I left the door open and my dog went up to it. He thought about going out for a second and then he ran out. So then I see that I left the door open and realize my dog is gone. And then I run out the door to chase after him. I see him in the distance and then I yell his name. However, when he sees me running after him, he runs in the opposite direction. But I keep chasing him, testing different techniques to try to catch him. I try creeping up on him, but that fails. So then I try to Naruto run, and that causes me to fall down. And when I get back up, I've lost him, and I say,
Gandhi? Oh no! I lost him!
like for part 2.
So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and it's pretty big now, but everyone wanted it bigger, so I went to Walmart to get more bands, but they were out, so I went to a different Walmart and got some. Then went home, set down a pile of bands, and got busy placing the entire thing until it was done. And then I dumped out a few more bags, and first placed the bag of smaller rubber bands, and then the bags of thicker rubber bands until I was done with that. And it now weighs nearly 16 pounds, and still bounces pretty high, but it's hard to catch now, and it makes a decent basketball. Like if you want me to keep going.
Late for school part 2. So after I look at the clock, I run upstairs to grab my keys. I see them on my desk and I grab them and I take off. I then dart down the stairs and head out the front door. I run past the front of my house and then I hurdle the bush and run to my car. I then struggle with my keys, unlock it, get in, start my car, and then I put it in reverse. As I pull out of my driveway, I think about how this could have happened. I think to myself, my dad should have woke me up. Wondering why he didn't, I get out my phone and decide to call him. He picks up and I say,
Hey Dad, where is everyone?
He then tells me it's President's Day and everybody's asleep at the house.
We don't have school today? Because it's President's Day?
I then express my feelings in the car. I then pick back up the phone and say,
Okay.
Check engine light, part 2. So here I am, abandoned on this road, not knowing what to do, but then I remember.
Oh wait, my brother's a mechanic. I'll just call him.
So I call my brother and say,
Hey, I'm stranded and my car won't start.
Then I tell him where I'm at, and he heads that way. After a 15-minute wait, he shows up. He gets out of his truck to go and pop the hood. I see him, and then I get out to go and meet him by the hood. He pops the hood, and then I ask him.
So what do you think's wrong with it? Well, it's Ford.
After the slander, he then tells me the actual problem is...
Your throttle body cable's unhooked.
He then plugs it back in, and then I leave to test if my car will start. I get in my car, turn the key, and it works.
Hey, it worked.
So I roll down my window and say,
Part 4 of making a rubber band ball. So this watermelon exploded and left us with this wad of rubber bands, and I've been adding a lot of rubber bands to it. And I said it would take 1 million likes for me to keep going, and it got 4 million. So I went to Walmart, got more rubber bands, and then left, went home, set them down, and opened them up. And then the next day I got on that rubber band grind, placing the entire pile on the ball. And when I was done, I left and came back again later to place another bag on. And once I finished that ball, it was pretty big, like the size of my head. I weighed it, and it weighed 5 pounds. And it also bounced pretty high, and made a decent basketball for my broken hoop. And after that, my brother wanted to play some bands, so I let him. But he gave up, and I ended up having to finish his pile off. And after that, I only had one more big pile left, so I dumped it all out and started placing them. I finished it up and then started on the bag of thicker rubber bands. And now I'm out. This sucked a lot, and since the last post got like 4 million likes, it's going to take like 5 million likes now for me to keep going. Rubber band ball part 9. So a lot of people don't know that it started when this watermelon exploded and left me with this water rubber bands. And ever since then, I've just been adding on to it, and this is the entire compilation up until now. And I needed more colored rubber bands, so I went to Walmart, but they were out. So I got gas and went to a different Walmart. But they were out too, so I went to another one, and they finally had some. Then I went home, dumped out a bag, and then got busy placing the entire pile of rubber bands until I was done. And then I left and came back later. I dumped out the colored rubber bands and placed that entire pile. Then I found some more rubber bands in the floor, placed those, and then placed a bag of thicker rubber bands that I also found in the floor. And I was done. It now weighs 14.7 pounds, is the size of my head, and bounces pretty high. And it's also bigger than a basketball, like if you want me to keep going.
So I'm now to rubber band ball part 49, and I have 25 pounds of rubber bands again. I dumped out the whole pile, and when we began placing for a long time, as you can tell by the clouds going by in the background, this took forever. But eventually, we got the entire pile done. And the ball is completely massive. I weighed it in at 263 pounds, and look at me sitting on it and then falling, and we can barely pick it up together. Like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So I'm now all the way to rubber band ball part 48. I dumped out 5 pound bags of rubber bands and got to placing. With some help, because this was going to take a long time alone, and this was a lot of bands. We kept placing and eventually had all the blue paint covered. And then eventually we got tired and took a break, and then came back and finished off the entire pile until there was no bands left. Put it on the scale, and it weighed in at almost 240 pounds. And it takes 2 people to pick it up. Like if I should keep on adding bands to it.
So I'm back at it again with the rubber band ball, and I need more rubber bands again. So I went to Walmart and counted out like 12 packs of rubber bands in the floor, and then grabbed them all and went home. And I first started with the pack I ordered on Amazon to match the surface of the ball. And after I was done with that, I took a break and came back later to place all the colored rubber bands. I dumped them all out into a pile, which was a lot, and then began placing them for quite a while until I was done. And the scale said it weighed 39 pounds, so I double checked on another one and it said the same thing. It's really hard to throw and officially impossible to make a basket with now, but I can stand on it, kinda. Like if you think I should keep going. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 63, and we built this Lego tower to knock it over with the rubber band ball. It completely knocked it over, and then I weighed the ball in at 555 pounds, and then we got busy placing more bands to make it even heavier. I had a whole box dumped out, and my friend Brendan helped me place all these bands. And to make it go faster, we tried to do 2 and 3 bands at a time. And these are like the max custom length bands I can find, so I don't know what I'm going to do after this, but we were done. And the ball is now at an unreal level of massiveness. It about crushed this fort, then almost hit Brendan, and we weighed it in at 580 pounds, so like if you want me to keep on going. I'm now to rubber band ball part 60, and we started off trying to do backflips but failed, so then we weighed it in at 496 pounds. And I used a lot of rubber bands to build this giant rubber band trampoline, but I had enough left over to get it over 500 pounds. We took a little break and then came back, and we finished off the entire pile, and it was done. The bands are now getting really tight in the ball, and look at its size comparison next to a tire. And then I tried to crush this watermelon but missed and crushed the pool instead. Tried to get it out, a lot of water came out, and it wouldn't crush the watermelon, so then I just took it inside, fell on it, and weighed it at 515 pounds. So like if I should take it to 1,000 pounds. So this is rubber band ball part 55. And I dumped out another 25 pounds of rubber bands and started placing. And I actually have a new scale on the way. It can read all the way up to 1,000 pounds, and I think the ball will be 400 pounds after I'm done with this pile, but we'll have to test it when the scale gets here. I launched some of these bands, and then I compared the ball next to me, and it's completely massive, and there's no chance I can pick it up anymore. But it's way easier to stand on than ever before, and I can even like flip off it. This ball is just completely crazy, so like if you want me to take it to 1,000 pounds. So this is part 18 of making this giant rubber band ball, and I'm just going to keep going. So I went to Walmart and got like 9 packs of colored rubber bands, then left, went home, and dumped them all out into a giant pile, and got busy placing them. And I placed the entire pile, which took quite a while. And then I left and took a break and came back later with this bag. I dumped it out and placed that entire pile. And eventually I was done. And it weighs a lot. It's bigger than my head, it's pretty hard to make a basket with, I can stand on it, and really hard to throw. Like if you think I should keep going. This is rubber band ball part 64, and it can barely fit through a doorway, and here it is next to a tire. I rolled it to the other end of the warehouse and then decided to crush a bunch of poppers with it. Here it goes. And after that, I rolled it onto the scale, breaking this little wood ramp and weighing it in at 585 pounds. And it was now time to get the ball over 600 pounds. So I dumped out a bunch more bands, and then look at this other angle. The ball is huge, and the camera just doesn't do it justice how big it is. And my friend helped me place bands for so long until eventually the pile was out. And the ball was done. I rolled it over the beanbag and then used it as like a giant exercise ball that's just huge and weighs like 600 pounds. I crushed this ball pit ball and then pushed it with the hoverboard onto the scale and weighed it at 605 pounds. So like if I should keep on going.
So I'm now all the way to rubber band ball part 50, which is literally insane. So I'm just going to place another pile and see how heavy I can get it. Right now it's at like 260 pounds. We placed for a long time, which was getting kind of exhausting. And be sure to comment any ideas you have for this rubber band ball now, because it's getting pretty heavy to do anything with. But we finished and we weighed it in at 287 pounds. The camera just doesn't do it justice. And then it fell on me and I exaggerated the fall, but then it actually hurt my foot. Like if you want me to keep going.
So I can't believe this ball's still going, but I'm at rubber band ball part 57 and I weigh it in at 422 pounds, but I'm going to keep on adding bands and make it even bigger. And a lot of people wonder why I wear gloves, and it's because if I don't, the bands will rub against my hand and create blisters. And I kept on placing bands until we were completely out, and look at it. It's huge. I can stand on it with ease now, but not pick it up. And it's tall enough to use as a platform to fall off of and flip. Then I tried to do like this rolling trick shot and just fell on my butt. But I did make this dunk off of it and this basket. And it was finally time to weigh it in at 447 pounds. It is massive, like if I should keep going. So one day, after destroying a bunch of stuff with my homemade rubber band ball wrecking ball, I got a microwave and decided to go again. And it weighs like 123 pounds now, so it should do more damage. Here it goes. Yeah, I didn't think it was enough damage, so I set it back up and went again. And it did get nailed, but I wanted to hit it one more time. Boom. And then I put down this kickball, thinking it would go super far, but it didn't. So then I got out this broken TV that I failed to smash before, and it did that, and completely destroyed the microwave that was holding it up. I walked up to it, and then my brother pulled the door off. Let me know what else we should smash. So now to part 32 of this rubber band ball, and I'm probably never stopping, honestly. I bought another one of these packages, put it in a pile, and placed it. And then I got out all the colored rubber bands that are actually meant for garbage cans. And I placed that entire pile as well, and the ball now weighs 84 pounds. And I took it out to the street, and because my wrist is kind of hurt, I couldn't really pick it up, but here's it next to a basketball, and then we walked off together in the sunset, like if I should keep on going.
So I'm now to part 20 of this, which is crazy, and I'm just going to keep going. So I went to Walmart and bought all the colored rubber bands they had, then went home and dumped them all out into a pile. And then I got busy placing them until I was done with that pile. Then I got the 2 packs I ordered, dumped them all out into a pile, and began placing them until the ball was finished. And it now weighs an astounding 42 pounds. It is very hard to bounce now, and its basketball days are just over. But I am getting better at standing on it, so that's cool. Like if you want me to keep going. So I'm now all the way to part 34 of this giant rubber band ball. And it's getting kind of redundant, but I'm going to try to keep it interesting. I ordered these bands, placed them on, Then I got the other pile, which is these colored rubber bands that I actually have to untie first and then place them on the ball. And after placing this entire pile, it now weighs almost 95 pounds. I struggled to make it out to the cul-de-sac. And it's so heavy it even picked up grass. Then I picked it up and threw it, and look at it in freeze frame. Look how big it is. It's so big, there's really not much you can even do with it. Here's it next to a basketball. Here's it crushing one and then falling off. And then me trying to stand on it, but failing and crushing the basketball goal. So, like if I should keep on going, or comment what I should do. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 41, and my 25 pounds of rubber bands got here, so I took it upstairs along with my giant rubber band ball. I took it all to the room where I placed the bands, and then I threw that in a package and opened it up. And each bag weighed 5 pounds. I dumped them all out, and the bands were pretty good. So I dumped out 10 pounds of bands and got to placing. And it was a lot, so I had my brother help me with this one. And we were going for so long, my phone even cut out because it ran out of storage. But we finished eventually and then took it downstairs. I got it all the way down and then weighed it in at 123 pounds. I took it outside and just look at it next to a wheel and next to my head. And here's my best effort at trying to pick it up. I can barely do it anymore. Let me know what else I should do with this ball. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and people seem to never want me to stop. So I went to Walmart, got a bunch more rubber bands, and then went home to start placing them. I dumped out the little bags first and began placing all of those until I was done, which took a while. Then I left and came back later to place all of the colored rubber bands, which took even longer, but now it looks pretty. I left again and came back to place the last bag of thicker rubber bands, and it was finally done. And it now weighs 17.5 pounds, is bigger than my head, and is pretty hard to catch when you bounce it.
And now it's noticeably bigger than a basketball, like if you want me to continue this ball. So this is rubber band ball part 38, and this ball is getting giant, and I'm going to keep going. Got a bunch more bands, you know, and I tested out these new bands that didn't end up working. So I just ended up going back to these colored rubber bands, and the camera cut out, and I lost all that footage of me putting on. So here's me putting on the last one, and then taking it downstairs. And the ball now weighs 109 pounds. I took it outside, and it ran into a bush. And then I set it on top of this swing and started swinging it. And it was pretty cool, and I tried to knock it off, but couldn't. The most it did was that, and then I just got on it and kicked it off. And it's so heavy I can barely pick it up anymore. Let me know if you want me to keep going. So I'm now to part 37 of this giant rubber band ball. And it's getting pretty giant, but everyone still wants it to be bigger. So I ordered more rubber bands, dumped them into a pile, and started placing. And then this happened because it's getting hard to place them. But I kept on going, finishing the pile, and then I took a break and went outside to play with the ball in the snow. And there wasn't much snow, but I made as big a snowball as I could, set it on the rubber band ball, and then crushed it. And then I came back to place another pile. I dumped it out, and then I placed it a little bit differently this time. I just threw all the bands on the ball. Bam. Magic. And the ball actually broke the scale, and the scale won't read anymore, so I don't know how much it weighs. But I took it out of the coal sack, and it's just pretty heavy. So, like if you want me to keep on going. So I'm now all the way to part 33 of this giant rubber band ball, which is insane. And I got another box. I placed this entire pile of rubber bands, which wasn't that bad, and then dumped out all these colored garbage bag rubber bands. I had them in a nice pile and then placed them all one by one until I was out. And it now weighs over 90 pounds. I took it out to the cul-de-sac and tried the best I could to pick it up and throw it. And then I stood on it, and this time I actually didn't fall off it. I jumped, and here it is next to my head, and here it is rolling. Like if you want me to keep on going.
Part 2 of losing my dog. So after I lose him, I try running around and yelling his name.
Gandhi!
I also try saying,
Come out, buddy, I've got a treat!
but when that doesn't work, I just give up and say,
I quit! Ugh. I'm never gonna find my dog!
But then I decide to get up and I see him off in the distance. So I chase after him. And like before, it fails. So then I say,
I'm headed home, Gandhi!
And I run home hoping he will follow me. And he takes his time, but sure enough, he eventually darts home.
So one day it was rubber band ball part 44, and first I had to get the ball out of the zip line. I got it out, and then I had to carry it all the way upstairs. I made it up, and then I took it to the room where I placed all my bands and got to place them. I placed the entire pile of like 15 pounds of rubber bands for quite a while until I was done, and I carried it all the way downstairs and weighed it in at like 164 pounds. Then I took it out to the street and just look at it. It's massive. Can't pick it up. I just can kick it. Like if you want me to keep on going. So one day I rolled my rubber band ball back upstairs because I'm now at part like 42. It weighs like 123 pounds, and I dumped out 3 more bags, which is like 15-ish pounds or something like that. And me and my brother got to placing them. And this was the most amount of bands I've ever placed, so we took a break and took it out to the snow. And I made a snowball, then threw it at it, and then rolled it around in the snow, rolled it over this hill, and then picked it up and dropped it. Then the next day I got back to placing, which was a huge pile that took me a long time to place, but I got it. And the ball was a bit deformed afterwards, but it's okay. It weighs like 139 pounds now, and just look at it next to my head. Like if you want me to keep on going. It's rubber band ball part 94, and we're going to add 50 more pounds or 2 more boxes of rubber band. The ball is currently 1,300 pounds and a long way from the world record. We got to it, looping all these bands as usual into 2 big piles. Here was the rubber band ball in all its awesomeness, and then we just kept on wrapping the bands around the ball like this. And in not too long, bam, 50 pounds was added onto the ball, and it's just completely massive. And at 1,350 pounds, it was pretty hard for me or my friend Brendan to push it. Kind of dangerous rolling, and be sure to give a like on this video if you want me to keep on going. Part 5 of making a giant rubber band ball. So I've been making this rubber band ball, and I ran out of rubber bands, so I went to Walmart. Got a bunch more rubber bands, and then I went home, dumped 2 bags out, put some gloves on so I didn't break my skin again, and started placing the bands. And then left and came back the next day to finish off the pile. It looked pretty good so far, and then I forgot to video placing a whole nother bag. But it looks like this, and then I dumped out all the colored rubber bands and started placing them all on the rubber band ball. And I was done, and it was almost the size of my head and weighed 8.2 pounds. And bounced pretty high. And also made a decent basketball, like if you want me to keep going.
So it's rubber band ball part 86, and my giant 1,100 pound rubber band ball needs more bands to get heavier. We dumped out 25 pounds of these bands to loop around the ball. And we have to loop all the bands now because these bands are too small to stretch around the ball. And bigger bands than this are way too expensive and really hard to find. But eventually we finished looping the entire piles, which is the longest part, but then began the shortest part, which is just looping and looping until we were done. Then we started on the other one and looped it until it was done. Tied it, and here it is. We rolled it across the warehouse, rolled it off the ramp, and the ball should be around 1,125 pounds. Like for me to keep going.
So it's giant rubber band ball part 82, and I got a sample amount of these giant green rubber bands to test them out. They work really well, but for now I only have these rubber bands. The ball's just over 1,000 pounds, and these bands barely work anymore. They're way too tight. We had to prop the ball up as tall as possible to even fit the bands, but after a long time we were done with the entire pile. It's a little wonky, but here it is. Then here's me jumping on it, rolling around a little bit, and jumping off. And it was time to weigh it in. We got it on the scale, and it was going back and forth between 1,020 and 1,040. Like if I should keep on going.
So one day people were commenting saying my over 1,400 pound rubber band ball is boring now because it can barely move. But at the end of the video, this ball will be over 1,500 pounds, and I'm going to prove that we can still move it by knocking down a bunch of bowling pins. We finished looping all 50 pounds of bands and then placed it perfectly on the ball like this. And then it was time to set up these pins. I set them up, tested them out, and then set them up again for the rubber band ball. And the ball can roll with a lot of effort, but it's really hard to get it to go where you want it. We eventually knocked over a bunch of pins and then crushed this pin like this. So comment if I should keep the series alive.
Well, it's now rubber band ball part 46, and now I just take the rubber band ball outside to work on it because it's too big to just keep inside. I had my pile of like 15 pounds of rubber bands and placed the whole pile for a long time until I was all out of bands and pretty tired. And now the ball weighs like 190 pounds almost. Here I am trying to jump across it and then fly, and I can't pick it up. And I'm going to have to order some even bigger bands, so like if you want me to keep going. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 61, and the ball is over 500 pounds, but I guess everyone wants me to keep on going. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. My friend Brendan and I, we placed bands for a while, then left and came back the next day to place again, and this happened. A band broke and made him launch backwards. So I had to help him back up, and then we got back to placing. And I think this is Brendan's last time placing the rubber bands on the ball. But after way too long, we were done, and the ball is huge, and the bands are way too tight. Just look at me standing on it and then trying to bounce stuff on it. And I finally rolled it back on the scale and weighed it in at 541 pounds. So, like, if you want me to keep on going.
It's officially part 99 of my giant rubber band ball, and this is 50 more pounds of rubber bands that we're about to add on to the ball. We start by looping all the bands together like this, which is the longest part. We sit there for what feels like an eternity, just looping band after band after band until the pile is completely empty. We're almost to rubber band ball part 100, which is crazy, and for part 100 we're going to be placing 100 pounds on the rubber band ball. And we finished up these two 25-pound strands like this until the ball was finished. Weighing literally 1,600 pounds, it almost took out my tripod.
One day on part 53 of my giant rubber band ball series, I thought it was like any other rubber band ball video, placing a bunch of bands, but the clouds began to move in. After a while of placing rubber bands, it began to pour, and the rain just kept coming down harder and harder, so I got the beanbag to safety and then had to come back for the rubber band ball. Pushed that over 300-pound rubber band ball through the rain and into the garage, and then went back, making 2 trips to get all the rubber bands to place it in the garage. I shut the garage door, dried off the rubber band ball, and we got to work placing all the rest of the bands until we were eventually done. And the ball now should weigh like 347 pounds, like if I should keep on going. So it's now rubber band ball part 56, and I bought a 1,000-pound scale to weigh it, and it weighs in at 396 pounds, but we gotta get it to 1,000. So my friend and I began placing a giant pile of bands for what felt like an eternity, and it got dark, and we kept on placing until we were completely out. And now we gotta weigh it, but first I wanted to test standing on it, so I ran on it like a barrel, then I did that, then stood on it, and then fell again. And here it is next to my head. Then I put it back on the scale, and it weighed in at 422, then 428. So I don't know, but like if I should keep on adding bands. It's part 92 of my giant 1,200-pound rubber band ball, and we're going to add 2 boxes, which is 50 pounds, and more than we've ever added in one video. We had all the bands ready, which was a lot, and we were ready to just loop them all. I'm slowly going to be bumping up my rate of production. That way we can eventually get the world record. We looped the entire pile until it looked like this, then wrapped each strand around the ball. There's 25 pounds, and here's another 25 pounds wrapped completely around the rubber band ball. And my phone just doesn't justify how big this ball is. It is so insane and so hard to move. The ball should weigh around 1,250 pounds now, and it's really tall. To give you an idea, I'm 6'1", and here's me jumping on it. Like if you want me to keep on adding bands to beat the world record. So this rubber band ball is just completely insane now. We dumped out all these bands to place on the ball and got busy looping each one. We looped the pile into 2 big strands of bands like this. It's really hard to move, but we pushed it to the center, and then we're starting to place the big loops of bands like this. And these videos cost a lot to make, so it's really helpful when you like and comment on it. My phone just doesn't do this ball justice of how big it is. It's so hard to push, and it's just so cool and really hard to control because it weighs 1,150 pounds.
It's rubber band ball part 85, and I dumped out all these 12-inch rubber bands to loop them together and place them around the ball. My friend Brennan and I spent about an hour looping 25 pounds of these bands until we had 2 giant strands. And since in the last video we finally figured out the best method to loop them around, that was the easiest part. Here's the final strand, and it didn't take that long until it was completely covered. I tightened it on the ball, and this is what 25 25 pounds looks like. And here's a painting of the rubber band ball, then me next to it, then up close. And to be honest, I don't know how to work this super expensive scale I bought very well. But between all the pounds of bands I bought, it should weigh around 1,100 pounds. And it's a big ball, like for me to keep going. So it's rubber band ball part 84, and I got another big box with 5-pound bags of rubber bands. And since the bands are too big to get on the ball now, we're going to have to loop them into 2 giant strands like this. We spent about an hour doing this, looping the entire pile until we had 2 giant strands. And we didn't know the best way to go about putting them in the ball. We moved everything out of the way and then realized eventually if someone was standing on a chair and then we ran around, it was easy, but it made us really dizzy. Eventually we finished off the entire pile using this method, and then for the second pile we moved the ball over a little bit to add bands on this side, and we figured out wrapping around like this was a lot easier and took like half the time. And the ball actually looks pretty cool now. I stood on it, then we pushed it onto the scale, and it weighs about 1,070 pounds, like if I should keep on going.
So I'm now at a rubber band ball part 51, and it is huge. I didn't get quite as many rubber bands this time though because there was a delay in shipping this week, but the ball's close to 300 pounds now and I want to get it there. I placed this entire pile all the way until my phone died and stopped recording. But I still finished the ball and tried to weigh it, but the scale was being weird and wouldn't tell me any accurate numbers that made any sense. But I'm assuming it's close to 300 pounds. And the ball almost tried to roll into a car, like if I should keep going. So it's now rubber band ball part 71, and this ball is insanely massive at 750 pounds, but we're going to make it even bigger. And this time half the bands are these half-inch bands that I've never tested before, so we'll see how they go. And the bands were just really tight, so we ended up moving the ball to see if it would make it better, and it did because none of the bands been placed on that side that much. And it also helped make the ball more even. But eventually, after a long time, we were done. The ball is huge. Here I am trying to stand on it and walk on it and almost fall. I dropped some Orbeez on it, threw a water balloon at it, and crushed a water balloon, and then weighed it in at 777 pounds. So like this video if you want me to keep on adding bands. So one day on rubber band ball part 54, I loaded up the giant rubber band ball with my brother, and we drove it out to a warehouse where I would store it. I let the rubber band ball out and stopped it, and this is its new home. And then I dumped out a bunch more bands to begin working on it that night. And my friend and I got busy placing as many bands as possible as the night began to get darker. Now I'm in the process of getting another scale for this thing so I can get the exact weight perfectly. But it's massive and weighs around 370 pounds. I rolled it around, ran with it, and then rolled it back. Like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So it's now part 47 of the giant rubber band ball. I let it hit a ramp and then got out 25 pounds of bands, dumped them all out into a pile, and started placing them. And this was a lot of bands, the most I've ever placed. So I thought, how could I do this more efficiently? And I had the idea, pay someone. So I paid 2 friends that day to finish up this pile. And they got busy placing a lot of bands while I watched occasionally and then switched in and out even once. But then they kept going until eventually they had a much smaller pile left and just threw that pile on and it was done. And it now weighs 213 pounds. And I also decided to spray paint it because I saw a comment that told me to. Like if I should keep going. So one day I decided to take my giant 123 pound rubber band ball to the gym. And my friend tried overhead pressing it to start out. And he got it. So then I tried and I just couldn't do it. And then we saw a scale and decided to weigh it and it weighed 123. Then I tried benching it and about crushed myself. Then we convinced this other dude in there to try to overhead press it and he also got it. Then my other friend tried and kind of got it. Then my friend who's 6'7" tried, put it on his knee first, and then also kind of got it. Then I tried again and didn't quite get it, but did a little bit better. Then my friend tried benching it and about crushed himself too, and then got one rep with some stability. And then we had the idea to put it on a treadmill. We put it on and it started rolling backwards. And we got it to just roll on there by itself, and it went all the way to the back and then came off. Then my friend golfed with it. Let me know what else I should do with this giant rubber band ball. So I'm to part 39 of this giant rubber band ball, and I can't find any other type of rubber bands except these ones to place on it. So let me know if you have any other options, but for now, I'm going to keep on placing these. And I placed the entire pile of color rubber bands until I was all out. And then I took the ball outside to mess around with it, and it was snowing, so I just laid on the ball and caught the snow. And I can't even lift it over my head anymore because it weighs like 110 pounds. And then here's me breaking a basketball goal with it. And here it is next to a basketball, and then me standing on it, and let me know if I should keep on doing this. So one day it was snowing outside, and I decided I wanted to build a giant snowman and destroy it with my giant 100-pound rubber band ball. So I started with the snowball, and it got bigger and bigger till eventually we had our base. We cleaned it up a little bit, and then I rolled around another snowball until I had the midsection. Put it on, smoothed it out, and then put on the head. We smoothed out the rest and gave it arms and a chain, and turned him into Drippy Steve the Snowman. Hey, icy. Then I filled up my super powerful water gun with hot tub water and blew a hole in his face. And then supercharged his nose off. And after that, I got out the giant rubber band ball, picked it up, and threw it at his head. And he was pretty wrecked. Here's me pretending I'm a snowman, and then the rubber band ball going past and being on him and throwing it at his back. But none of it worked, so I threw this thing at him and then jumped into him. But he was too solid. Let me know what else I should try. So I'm now to part 31 of making this giant rubber band ball, and I got another package. I dumped out this pack of pretty big rubber bands and placed the entire pile.
And then, like I did last time, got a bunch of these colored garbage bag rubber bands and placed them all. And these ones placed pretty good. I finished and the ball now weighs 81 pounds. I took it downstairs and out to the cul-de-sac where I compared it to my head and then got up and tried to throw it. And then I tried to throw it behind me. And then stood on it. And even tried to ramp it, but just broke the ramp. So like if you want me to keep going, and comment any ideas you have for it.
So it's another week and I'm on a rubber band ball part 58 and I weighed it in at 446 pounds and then I had to keep on adding more. I dumped out a whole nother box of bands and got to work.
And I kept on placing for about an eternity and ran through multiple pairs of gloves, but eventually we made it.
This thing is now so big, the camera just doesn't justify how big it is. I was going to do a backflip, but ended up just doing that. And then I rolled it over the trampoline, fell off of it. Here's just a quick size comparison next to a ball pit ball. Then I put it on the scale, zeroed it out, and it weighed in at 472 pounds. So like this video if you want me to continue building it. So one day it was rubber band ball part 68, and the rubber band ball is now almost 700 pounds. But today we're going to get it there. And somebody in the last video commented to get colored rubber bands, so I got these black rubber bands so you can see them placed on the ball. And the cool thing about two different colors is you can see them all going onto the ball. And it took us quite a while, but eventually we got it done. And the ball looks really cool now. It looks kind of three-dimensional. Look at it. The black bands are more sleek than the other ones. And the ball is so massive. Look at it in comparison to my head. Then I zeroed out the scale and put it back on, and it weighed 706 pounds. So, like, if I should keep on adding bands. So I'm now all the way to part 65 of my giant rubber band ball, and here's a little rubber band ball being thrown on it, and then me pushing it to the scale to weigh it in at 607 pounds. Then we threw down another pile to keep on placing and make it even bigger. And people ask me all the time what my goal is for this ball, and I don't even know. I'm just going to try to get it as big as possible. And it always takes way longer than it looks to place all these bands, but eventually we got it done. I tried to push it with my hoverboard and kind of worked. Then we put it back on the scale and it was like 30 pounds off. So it actually weighs like 634 pounds. So like if you want me to keep on going.
It's now rubber band ball part 78 and the ball is so close to 1,000 pounds. The scales broke, but the ball should be about 945 pounds and we're placing a bunch more bands. We eventually rolled the ball to a higher point. That way it would be easier to get the bands around the ball. We did this for a while until eventually we were done. This band flew in the sky. The ball should be about 970 pounds and it's huge. My friend Brendan did this, then I fell off it onto a beanbag, and like if I should keep on going. So I'm now to part 69 of my giant rubber band ball, and it's now over 700 pounds, but we're going to get it even bigger. I dumped out 25 pounds of bands to place on the ball, and I started placing with the help of my friend Brendan. And we actually placed 3 bands at once the whole time to make it go by a lot quicker. Until eventually we were done. I stood on it, and then tried to walk on it, and tried to walk again. It was actually kind of successful. Then I pushed it over here, dropped this ball on it, jumped on it, and then we tried to figure out how to get on the scale and weighed it in at 727 pounds. So like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 59 and it's almost at 500 pounds. So I got out another box of the 15-inch bands to see if I could get it there. And this was one of the most challenging rubber band ball videos because the bands were super tight and kept breaking, and it was also really hot. So we ended up having to take a day and come back to finish the pile. And while we were placing bands, we talked about how weird it was we were even making this. But it's also super cool. Just look at it here next to me. I measured it 30 inches high and like 98 inches around and then rolled it. And it almost took some stuff out. Then I tried to make a basket off of it, but failed. Then it was time to see if it was 500 pounds, but it fell 3 pounds short. So then I just rolled it off, like if I should keep on adding bands. So I'm now to part 40 of my giant rubber band ball, and I wanted to walk you guys through the entire process. I take it upstairs and into this room where I sit down and place rubber bands. I'm actually running out of the type of rubber bands I can place because these ones are just too tiny and break on me. And these ones are just getting old and I have to untangle them every single time. But no worries, I found this random custom rubber band site on the internet and called them up. Yo, I need your 15-inch rubber bands. I'll place an order for like 25 pounds. And just like that, $200 worth of rubber bands was on the way. But for now, I'm going to place these ones. I put them in a pile and then untied them all and got to placing them. And I placed the entire pile of colored rubber bands until I was all out. And after that, I took it downstairs, which was a struggle, but I got it. And I weighed the ball in at 113 pounds. I then took it to the street to try to pick it up. And I can get it up to here, but it's too heavy to get over my head. So I just laid on it, like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 43, and I got another box of rubber bands. I dumped them out, and these bands are even thicker than the last ones. I then dumped out another bag and got to placing them. And it was way easier to place these bands because they're twice as thick, and I got a lot more done with less time. I finished it up, and then I took it all the way downstairs to weigh it, and it weighed in at 149 pounds. I then took it out to the street to try to pick it up, and just look at it next to my head. It's huge, and I couldn't pick it up. Like if you want me to keep on going. It's now rubber band ball part 87. The ball is 1,100 pounds, and this is 50 pounds of rubber band. I dumped out 25 pounds of rubber bands, and me and my friend Brendan were going to loop the entire pile. He looped half the bands, and I looped half the bands until we were done, and had 2 giant piles ready to place them on the ball. We propped up the ball to its tallest form to make it easier to place them around, and then went around and around while live streaming until we had the first pile done and the second pile, and it looked like this. The ball is insane. It should weigh 1,125 pounds, like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So it's now part 35 of my giant rubber band ball, and I decided to change up the scenery a little bit. I dumped out a whole box of rubber bands of different kinds. I started by dumping these colored garbage bag rubber bands into a pile and putting these gloves on so I don't hurt my fingers, and putting all the rubber bands on, and this happened. Right into my eye socket. And it hurt, but I kept on going because the rubber band ball wasn't going to make itself. I finished off all these colored ones and then dumped out these purple ones that I ended up not using because they were kind of trash. I got out these ones instead and placed the entire pile. And I was done and exhausted. The ball is almost 100 pounds now, and it's a pretty big struggle to get downstairs. Took it out to the street and barely picked it up. Yeah, it's getting pretty hard to throw now, so I just sit on it and stand on it. Like if you want me to keep on going to 100. This is my 1,250 pound rubber band ball, and it's part 93. Today we're going to be adding 2 boxes, which is another 50 pounds of rubber bands, which will get the ball all the way to 1,300 pounds. This is the longest part, where we looped the pile into 2 giant strands of bands until it was finished and we were ready to add them both on. And I asked you guys to vote on a name for the rubber band ball, and the winner is between Pablo and just the rubber band ball. Comment what you think we should do. Here I am standing on the ball, then falling off, and I just can't justify how big it is on camera. Like for me to keep on adding bands.
I'm now all the way to rubber band ball part 45, and I decided to do it outside today. And my rubber band ball also needed bands bad because it was looking kind of gross. And I placed bands out in the nice weather for quite a while and just enjoying life, you know, placing rubber bands until I was done. And the ball now weighs more than me at 174. It's getting impossible to move, so I just lay on it. And yeah, like if I should keep going.
So it's giant rubber band ball part 77, and I saw these little rubber band balls at the store, so I had to buy them all and compare them to my giant 895 pound rubber band ball. Mine was a lot bigger. I opened one up like this and compared it, and yeah, mine was way bigger. We're gonna make it even bigger, and I'm hoping in the next month I can get this ball all the way to 1,000 pounds. And we noticed the ball was kind of egg shaped, and it made it hard to place bands, so we moved it and put wedges down so the ball wouldn't move, and placed it like this, and it helped a lot. It really helped round out the ball and make it look a lot better. We placed the final band, and we were done. And the scale still broke, but the ball should be about 920 pounds. So it's rubber band ball part 74, and the ball won't fit through a doorway. It's over 800 pounds, and it's looking kind of rough, but we're on our way to 1,000 pounds, and we're going to get it. We dumped out a bunch more bands, and we've been using this same band for a while. They still work on the ball, but we almost need bigger bands. We kept on placing until it was done. And it's actually getting hard to jump on because it's so tall. I pulled a stray band onto it, and then crushed this box, and then pulled it to the scale. And at first, the scale was acting broken, but eventually it weighed in at 842 pounds. So, like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So it's rubber band ball part 76, and I tried to prove it weighs 870 pounds, but the scale's been broken, probably from the rubber band ball, but we're just going to keep adding bands anyway. We dumped out a huge pile of rubber bands and got to placing. And this really is a lot more work than it looks like, band after band for so long. We flipped it to make it cover the blue side, and then we were done. It looks really good, and it's probably within 5 pounds of 900 pounds. Here I am laying next to it, and then jumping on it and trying to run on it. I pushed the ball, tried to get a run, and then fell, and then did it again. Kind of got one. Yeah, pretty cool. Like if I should keep going to 1,000. So one day it was rubber band ball part 91, and today we're going to get it over 1,200 pounds. We opened these rubber bands perfectly normally, and then we just started looping the giant pile like we normally do. And I'm in the works to get a ton more rubber bands because we're going to have to really increase the production rate if we want to ever beat that world record. We wrapped both strands around, 1 and then 2, like this. And there you can see all the bands we placed. Looks like a ring. I jumped on the ball, stood on it, looked really cool, then pushed it forward a little bit and threw another rubber band ball at it. So, like if you want me to keep on adding rubber bands. So this is my rubber band ball, and here's the world record. My ball is currently 1,400 pounds and a long way from the record at 9,000 pounds, but we looped all these bands, 50 pounds to be exact, until it was finished, and then we were ready to place them on the ball to get it one step closer to the world record. And just by leaving a like on this video, you can help aid in the journey to beating the world record. Here I am rolling and then falling off the ball like this, and here's the ball in all of its awesomeness. So it's rubber band ball part 72, and the ball's a little messed up from a video that's not out yet, but it still weighs 775 pounds, so we're going to keep on adding bands. And this time I got these special blue bands, and we began fixing up the ball and making it look cooler with these blue bands. And we kept on rotating it, that way the bands would be spread more evenly and it would be easier to place the bands. And after a very long time, we were done. I about crashed into the wall, then jumped on it and dropped my phone. And this ball is completely insane. Here's next to the little ball next to me, and then I struggled to put it on the scale, but got it and weighed it at over 800 pounds, like if I should keep on going. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 67, and And we actually made a couple more tiny rubber band balls. Here they are on a mini trampoline. And the big one was too big for it, so we just put it on the scale and weighed it in at 655 pounds. And now it's time to make it bigger. I dumped out a whole nother pile. Then my friend and I got to placing bands for a really long time. And the bigger this ball gets, the harder it is for it to look bigger. So we got to add a lot of bands every time. And we finished up the pile, and then I wanted to test if it would go through a doorway, and it wouldn't. It's too big now. And I failed trying to get it back on the scale, so we had to both push it on the scale and weigh it in at 679 pounds. So, like, if you want me to keep on going.
So I'm in a rubber band ball part 66, and the ball is huge. Look at me behind it. You can't even see me. And I put it on the scale, and it weighs 630 pounds, but we're going to get it even bigger and keep on adding bands. And my friend Brennan and I began placing bands for a very long time. And a lot of people say it looks like an egg now and not a ball, but it's very hard to keep it round because it's so big. And we try our best. And after we finished with the pile, I messed around with it, tried to throw balls on it, and then dunked with it. And I compared it next to this tiny rubber band ball and my head, then fell off of it, and took it back on the scale to weigh it in at 655 pounds. So, like, if I should keep on going. So one day it was rubber band ball part 75, and I rolled it across the warehouse and then put it on the scale, and it weighed 842 pounds. We dumped out a whole bunch more rubber bands and got to placing. The ball is really heavy and hard to move around, so we do our best to not place the bands in the same spot and try to keep it as round as possible. We finished the pile, and the camera just doesn't do the ball justice. I've moved it to the distance to kind of get an idea of how big it is, and then I slammed into the ball, dunked on it, totally done, and then tried to move it with the hoverboard but failed, so I spun around and put it on the scale, but we kind of broke it and it wouldn't read, but it's probably 870.
So it's rubber band ball part 73, and I about knocked over a fan with it and struggled to make it over to the scale, but weighed it in at 800 pounds. But we're going to add even more bands. And the ball still looks kind of broken, so hopefully after we place all these bands, it looks a lot neater. And the ball is finally getting close to 1,000 pounds, which is what the scale maxes out at. And we kept turning the ball to make it as round as possible. And after a long while of placing bands, we were finished. And the ball does look a lot neater. I jumped on it like this. Then it accidentally moved the couch when I was trying to make it over to the scale. Brendan tried pushing it on, but failed alone. So we both had to push it, and it weighed 829 pounds. Then pushed it off and took it outside to show the cows. Yeah, they thought it was pretty cool. Like if I should keep on going.
So it's part 98 of my over 1,500 pound rubber band ball. I ordered more bands at the price of $230. I recruited some help and then got out at looping all 50 pounds of bands to place on the ball. And this is the longest I've gone in between rubber band ball videos. Rubber bands have been pretty difficult to get lately, but as long as you guys keep liking and supporting these videos, I'll keep on adding more bands to the rubber band ball. We finished adding bands, threw some stuff, and then aired up this hamster ball. People wanted me to try to fit the ball in it, but I couldn't, so I threw it on top. Then I stood on the ball like this and hopped off. Like for me to keep going.
So this is part 83 of my over 1,000 pound rubber band ball. I bought a bunch more of these stretchier bands to try to put on the ball because they're a lot easier than the other bands, but they're way more expensive. And I put a poll on my YouTube to see if people wanted me to keep going or cut the ball in half, and 90% say keep going, so that's what I'm going to do. And if I want to beat the world record, I'm going to have to find a cheaper way to add a lot more weight really fast. And the scale wasn't really reading right because we kept knocking it off on accident, but the ball should be around 1,050 pounds. Like to keep on going.
So one day I went to this place that gets puppies from pet stores that have something wrong with them, and I decided to buy this puppy. She had a little hop, and we took her to PetSmart to pick out a bunch of toys. We got this, and she was looking pretty happy. Got a collar, then she itched like this, and that was pretty funny. And eventually, after about a week, her hop became more of a run, and she was quick, running all over the place. And she seemed overall pretty happy, and she even became pretty good friends with our other dog, Gundy, and we ended up naming her Remy. Go follow her. So it's giant rubber band ball part 77, and the scale doesn't really work anymore, but it's 920 pounds. We're so close to 1,000 pounds, and we're going to get it there soon. This pile weighs 25 pounds, and we placed the entire thing, which took quite a while, but eventually we were done, and I jumped on it, then sat on it, then laid next to it, then accidentally rolled it into the bang and drank it anyway, like if I should keep on going. So it's rubber band ball part 95, and this ball weighs 1,350 pounds. We had it outside and had to push it all the way inside, which was really hard, and then we dumped out all these bands to place. My friend Brennan did one pile of 25 pounds and I did the other pile of 25 pounds, and we just looped them all together until we had two giant strands of bands that we wrapped completely around the ball like this. Another 50 pounds like that. The ball is now 1,400 pounds. Be sure to give this a like for me to beat the world record. So I'm now all the way to rubber band ball part 70. It knocked over all these crates, then I zeroed out the scale and weighed it in at 730 pounds, and it was time to add a bunch more bands. So my friend Brennan and I got busy placing this entire pile, which took so long, and we we ended up taking a break and coming back the next day to finish it. But eventually it was done, and the ball is now even bigger. Look at it next to my head, me jumping on it, then me rolling it to Brendan, him rolling it back even faster, then dunking on it, and we weighed it back in at 755 pounds. So, like if you want me to keep on adding bands. It's rubber band ball part 88, and the ball weighs over 1,100 pounds. And it's going to take a very long time for us to build this ball up to the world record. So comment if you really want me to keep going. We looped 2 giant piles of our bands, did some jump rope with one of them, and then decided to place them on the ball. And while we're doing this, sometimes we forget about the fact that we're in front of an 1,100 pound rubber band ball. It's kind of crazy. We finished the ball and it's huge at 1,125 pounds. Comment your ideas for it. Now rubber band ball part 81, and I bought this new scale that weighs up to 5,000 pounds. It weighed the ball in at 990 pounds, and today we're going to get it over 1,000 pounds. I also wanted to try some different strategies, these big mover bands and looping these 12-inch bands. I thought looping these 12-inch bands sounded the easiest because you could just loop them together and then wrap them around. We dumped out a bunch of bands like this and then started looping. We looped for a while and decided to go ahead and place one on, and it looked pretty good, so we kept on going until we had the entire pile finished. We ended up with these 2 giant links of bands. We wrapped one all the way around it, which made me kind of dizzy, and then wrapped the other one until we were done. And the ball looked pretty good. We weighed it in over 1,000 pounds, finally. I was pretty excited. So now we just got to get to the new world record. Like if I should keep going.
This is $200 iceberg water, and this is $1 water. Let's see if I can tell the difference. No smell to this one. It smells pretty normal. This is the cheap one, I guarantee it. Whoa, that's like musky. That's the Berg water. That's crazy. So a while back, I bought this candle that had a tiny diamond inside. And then I bought this candle that was supposed to have loads of money inside. But all I ended up finding was this $2 bill. So I ordered 2 more brand new candles to increase my odds of finding thousands of dollars. This one smells like birthday cake. There's money in these, anywhere from $2 to $2,500. Last time we only found $2, but I gotta figure out how to get it in this pan so we can melt it and find the money faster. And it wouldn't come out, so I had a brilliant idea to put it in this box, tape it up, and throw it. Kinda scared, but... And after a few throws, it sounded pretty shattered. I opened up the box, and the candles were pretty broken, but not all the way, so we got out this hammer and finished up the job like this. And remember, I'm a trained professional. I pulled apart the glass like this, then pulled out the wick. Oh, we found the money. I pulled out the money and immediately unwrapped it, and again was left with this. It's a $2 bill. We have one left. Oh, there's the money. This has to be over $100, or else I'm just losing my money. $2. For $80 worth of candles, I got 2 $2 bills and an airhead. Worth that. So I bought this bag of dirt for $70, and we found enough gold to be worth approximately
$23.35.
And since then, you guys told me if I spend even more money on a better bag of dirt, I'd find even more gold. So I bought this bag off Amazon for $130, and I started out sifting all the big chunks to try to find a big nugget. And right away, we found one. It was one of the biggest ones we'd ever seen. It could be worth a ton on its own. And right after that, we saw another big chunk right here. I picked them up and put them both in the jar and then kept on searching. And we quickly found more gold. We found this bigger triangle piece and this even smaller piece you could barely see. And we just kept adding more and more gold to the jar. And after that, we literally just found piece after piece of gold nonstop. And after a little bit more searching through this pile, we found one more piece of gold. And then I got out the rest of the sand and dumped it in the sifter, sifted it out, and immediately found more gold. We found a few more pieces in the rest of this sand here and here. And then to make sure I didn't miss anything, I got out this metal detector, which detected one last really small piece. And then I resorted to panning for all the finer pieces left, which didn't really get me anything until eventually I was almost out and I saw it. It left tons of little pieces of gold that I put inside this container and then tested with my detector to make sure it was real, and then it was time to see what it was worth. Here's the gold I found. I want you to tell me what you think it's worth.
It's more than you've had in the past.
He then weighed it in the cap to see what it was worth.
You're 0.9 grams. $37 worth of gold.
Oh, that's actually a lot.
And before giving me any money for it, he made sure it was completely real. And he actually said he made a mistake and it was worth more.
It's worth $57. Sorry, I had the wrong carat weight.
No way.
I'll give you $50 for it. You're only losing half this way.
The most I ever made.
Well, you really didn't make anything. You still lost 80.
So in my last few videos, I've been trying to make a genuine Prince Rupert drop that's indestructible but snaps when you break the tail. But every time I broke the tail, all of my drops did not break. So today I'm attempting all your suggestions to make a genuine Prince Rupert drop. The first of which was melting a drop into ice cold water. So I melted it until it fell in the icy cold water, and just like that, we had our next drop. I pulled it out of the water and it looked super pristine and genuine and survived the hammer test. But when I chopped off the tail, it did not break. So the next one, I was going to use ice cold Gatorade, and you guys also said to focus on melting the bottom of the drop only and twisting the heat so it burns evenly, so that's what I did. It looked so cool next to the blue Gatorade, and I was sure to burn every single angle, this side, and here it is from above. It looked so pretty. And eventually it melted completely into the Gatorade like this. And after pulling it out of the Gatorade and looking at it, it looked slightly different, like it might be genuine. So I applied the pressure on the tail and snapped it. But the glass drop did not break. Bruh. In my last video, I attempted to create a Prince Rupert glass drop, which is basically a piece of glass that is indestructible unless the tail is broken. And I thought I succeeded because it looked like a Prince Rupert drop, and we couldn't seem to break it no matter what we tried. But I accidentally broke the tail off, and you guys told me that meant it wasn't a genuine Prince Rupert drop. So today I'm trying to create a genuine one, and I also started off trying to make a colored one, but it instantly broke when it hit the water. Because apparently the colored ones are way harder to make, but I tried one more time, and this time I was only able to melt it and bend it like this, and it wouldn't even fall. So yeah, I couldn't really make a colored one, so I just resorted to trying to make the genuine clear one that would break when I smashed the tail. In first try, we got what looked like a genuine Prince Rupert drop just hanging from this long glass strand. I put it first through a few durability tests, and it held up just like the other Prince Rupert drop and wouldn't break. Here I am trying to squeeze it as hard as I could with pliers to break it, but nothing happened, so it was time to go for the tail. Then I just grabbed it directly by the tail with these pliers until it completely snapped. But the drop didn't break. So comment if you know what I did wrong. So one day I wanted to see what would happen if you put 200 bath bombs inside a giant human hamster ball. Here's one of the bath bombs inside a jar of water, so I can only imagine how crazy it's going to be inside the hamster ball. The first step was just filling the ball completely up with water. I let the water fill for quite a while, and then we put the first bath bomb in. And once it hit the water, it immediately started fizzing and turning the water pinkish. And before we put all the bath bombs in, I decided to put a couple in my pocket and then get inside the ball and release them. And they looked so cool dissolving in the water. I had my brother drop a bunch more in to see what it would look like with a ton in there, and the water was basically super reddish orange at this point. So then I got out and re-aired up the ball because it was time to put all 200 in, and we had a genius method to get them in without losing any air by putting them in this tube that would shoot out into the water. We did this until all 200 bath bombs were inside the hamster ball swirling around, and it looked so insane inside. It looked like one giant bath bomb. And then we aired it back up with the leaf blower so I could try to get inside it, but as soon as I stepped in, the scent was immediately too strong. So I got out and we just drained it. So I've been trying to make a genuine Prince Rupert drop that shatters when the tail is snapped. And after doing some research, I think I know how you're supposed to actually do it now. The first thing is the water has to be really cold to create a temperature change in the drop. And apparently it's also better to do it handheld and rotate it like this. But my first attempt just created this ugly pretzel thing. But I just got a new piece of glass and really focused the heat on the bottom of the drop. And eventually it finally dropped into the water and it looked perfect. I pulled it out and it was beautiful. And now it was just time to test if it was genuine or not.
I'm gonna snip off the tail, and if this is genuine, it should shatter.
And here's what happened.